We got a countdown going on, huh?
Okay, hello, Amanda.
Hello.
Hi, and my name is Christian for those who are friends with Amanda. Right now, this is our first time really having a conversation. We had a little test run earlier today just to kind of make sure that the system worked. And this is my first time and your first time using this Be Live TV.
The platform. Yeah.
So at this point, we could be speaking into the void and crickets could be listening to us. So I don't know, maybe we'll kind of wait to see if someone offers any comments, or if people are listening and tuning into this, maybe just throw out a little comment so we know you're here.
Yeah.
And I think I might just, I'm going to pop over to Facebook just so I can kind of check if this is showing up on my page. Let me take a look. 1 second here. Oh, someone commented, so maybe we are live. Okay, it looks like we are live. Okay, so
good stuff.
interesting. I saw a comment come in on Facebook, but I don't see it coming in on. Oh, okay. Let's see here.
You gotta love like a new platform.
I know,
if
it's like,
anything, this is fun to learn something new. What do they say? Learn something new every day. Well, here we go. Here's one of our something news that you and I are learning today is the Be Live platform.
Be live now.
There we go.
So let's give a little context for the viewers, although both of you and I shared a bit of the context of how this ended up happening, and it's happened very fast.
Yeah.
So you posted on the topic of suicide, very serious topic, and one that you have personal experience with. And then I saw that, and I was moved by that, and I posted about my own experience with depression. And although there's probably some differences in our experiences, I mean, I've gone through suicidal depression, so like I'm familiar with that feeling. And the truth of the matter, there's so many people who have experienced this one way or another.
Right.
So I posted my comment, and then you replied to that, and then there's just this kind of like sparks of, okay, there's a connection here, and there's a topic that brings us together. And I just jumped in and said, hey, do you want to do a live dialogue on this?
Yeah.
And you just like jumped right in and like, hell yes.
Let's do it.
Now, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so while you were talking, yeah, like that's exactly what, how this all came into play was just simply through us connecting through a Facebook post and finding a common that you and I shared. And it's interesting how when we are, as humans, are willing to maybe pull back those curtains and actually get really real and really honest with where we've been and what we've experienced, how quickly we can create connection with other people.
Yeah.
So like, even just on the topic of depression, I know that during the time when I was going through my most depressed moments, there was a lot of guilt for me around it. There was a lot of shame for me around it. And I tried to, I hid it. I did my best to hide it, when really what I was mostly seeking for was connection. Yeah. And so I just love that, again, even through the same topic, like creating connection and following our inspiration and following our hearts and moving forward on something that was like, hey, you want to do this? Yeah. You want to do this? Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's do it. And let's see what unfolds.
Yeah. Well,
and like you had said, we both had just said, yeah, let's do it. And this is the first time that you and I are actually getting into dialogue about it. There's nothing scripted. We're just rolling.
Awesome. Well, you said some things that they were really poignant. The whole thing about being authentic really facilitates connection. And there's a whole bunch of thoughts kind of queuing up in my brain now as we're starting. And my feeling is we're going to have no problem, like we're going to have things to talk about. But I wanted to start with, so when I proposed this idea to you, I specifically said topic would be depression, the great liberator. Now, you said hell yes to that, and I know why I suggested that, but it certainly elicited a lot of curiosity in me, like what came up for you when I proposed that particular title.
Okay, yeah, so that particular title was like, that is exactly what depression has been for me in my life. Like that right there was absolutely the path that I walked with depression. And it has absolutely been like one of my greatest gifts. In that barbed wire packaging that feels like it hurts and isn't necessary. But along my journey, the more I unwrapped it, the more and more actually became. Like I was liberated through depression. To be totally honest, I'm going to say that it's like, oh yeah, I'm never those has completely shifted to one of, it was something that I carried guilt and tried to hide journey with it. It's now something that I am like, I have massive appreciation for. It's something that I don't have any issue speaking about with anybody. Like the guilt and shame for me is gone for that, because I've been able to shift my perspective and my experience with what depression has actually been in my life. So wow. I guess that would be why it was like, oh yeah, this is like a hell yes for me, because that's exactly in one title you experienced or you expressed what.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing all that. And just a side note, I don't know if I'm the only one experiencing this, but you are dropping out just a little bit periodically.
Dropping out. Okay.
So that could be your connection. And I'm just going to hop over to Facebook just a moment to make sure. I do see a couple of comments coming in here on the Be Live platform, but I'll check in on Facebook just to see that everything is working there too.
Perfect.
Okay. Yeah, someone else is saying you're breaking up. So, okay, well, we're just gonna have to work with that. So let's
let me see here. If I move.
Well,
find a better. Let's see.
Okay, right. We've got all kinds of awesome people on here. Paul, Carmine, Talene, Hannah. Hello, Hannah. Hannah is a neighbor of mine, and we actually haven't even met in person. She's just down the street, like a few blocks away. That's the awesome thing about Facebook, is we can connect into people in completely new ways in this virtual web. Okay, so everyone, thank you so much for being patient with us here. So you're closer to the Wi-Fi?
I'm closer to the Wi-Fi. Let's see if it's a shot.
Okay. Well.
Okay.
Well, we'll just give it a shot. However it is, for future reference, sometimes it's best to actually connect in with an Ethernet cable, because it's not relying on Wi-Fi. But we can deal with that. So this is like, we're just rolling with it. We've got a few people here listening in, and the Great Liberator. Well, thank you for sharing about that, and it's been a very, very, very long journey for me with my depression. I wish I could say like I experienced it, boom, had the big breakthroughs, but it's been like a very slow process for me. And, in retrospect, I could say that I've been super thorough, like cycling through it again and again. And there's one thing, like there's so many different goons. So, just personally with friends and also as a coach, which I do part-time, supporting many people through this. We have a term called depression, and it's actually a very loose term about many things, some that are unrelated. But it's helpful to have it for something. But if you really want to understand it, you have to talk to someone. You have to be with them to know what their experience is. And labels are helpful to give an idea of something. Okay, you can say to someone, I'm experiencing depression. The thing to follow up with that is, well, what does that mean for you? What does that look like? What are you experiencing? The most typical question that people who are maybe more unfamiliar with this ask is, what's wrong? That is the usual question. What's wrong?
Mm-hmm. What's wrong?
Right, and that also implies this shouldn't be happening. What, something got broken? What's wrong with you? What needs to be fixed? But if when people ask an open-ended question, so like unless you have works with people who have experienced it, you're probably not going to know what it means. So it's better to say, okay, tell me what depression means for you. Well, what is that? But that same question is important for us to ask of ourselves. We should actually take that same approach of openness and curiosity around, wow, I seem to be experiencing something. I've been told that this perhaps is depression. I wonder what this actually is. That way, you're staying in an open space of curiosity and non necessarily make it more pleasant, but you are at least going to have a chance to look at it directly through experiential eyes rather than, I guess, conditioned eyes or through assumptions. So for me, yeah, go ahead.
Well, one of the things I love about what you're saying is the at it from. So we can take on a label of, okay, I'm depressed or I have depression, which there's lots of stigma around that anyways, and also leads to like, do this. And right. I know for me, I often felt like I was a victim to it. Mine onset through different traumatic experiences as a child that went into my adult life. But approaching it from a curious space of, okay, I notice that I'm feeling really sad, or I notice that I'm feeling hopeless. And instead of being like, oh, I'm just depressed and that's it, I can go into curiosity of like, I wonder, why is this showing up right now? What is this here to teach me? No. And like you said, it's like, so it's been a long road. And for me, it was, I've worked through lots of it, and it's not often that depression shows up in my world, but it still does. It's not payment. And now I don't have to worry about it anymore. No, there's still days that it shows up, and I now know what works for me that I get to do or not do in those days when it shows up. Yeah. And that came as a result of getting curious about it instead of just putting a label on it, putting a label on me.
Well, when we look at what we're experiencing through those experiential eyes, and when we look at certain things that are reoccurring, perhaps, well, when we look at it through curiosity, perhaps as attributes as opposed to afflictions. Like, what is the purpose of this? Like you said, is there some hidden purpose to this? Does it have a positive function, an evolutionary function? And generally, evolution is an amazing thing. I mean, oh my God, that's like a portal just opened up in my head, like of so many things we could talk about, but it's like, because in our evolution, we as a species, develop certain attributes to deal with the present moment situation and conditions we're in. And as we evolve and those conditions change, a lot of that wiring is really still in our brain. So it served a function once, and it can still show up in situations where it doesn't serve as well. But even when old programming that was useful in our conditioning once upon a time still shows up, it's showing up reminding us, what are the next steps that I need to take, not just on behalf of myself for my own experience, but what steps can I take on behalf of evolution, right? There are always those people who are on the cutting edge of evolution and are innovating beyond where most people are at.
Yeah.
There is a great book by Malcolm Gladwell called Outliers, which actually talks about those kind of people who are not in the center of the norm, and they're crucial to the evolution of humanity. And they're generally misunderstood and maligned and in different ways because they're challenging the status quo. And
right.
But to be honest, like if the status quo was never challenged, we probably would not still enormous amount of tension going on in the world. And, there are people fighting, there are horrible things going on, and there are massive challenges facing the world. But that tension is part of what drives evolution, whether it's happening inside of you as an individual, or it's happening in a one-on-one relationship between a couple or in a family or a village, and so on and so forth. Tension is part of this.
Yes.
And so in that sense, I wanted to refer to depression as the great liberator because it serves a function. Now, generally, a very common story with depression is people are growing up in a family, there can be trauma, can be part of it, but even just feeling like you're an outsider, not fitting in.
Feeling different, yeah.
Feeling different. So, feeling alienated. Now, these are all really challenging things to feel and experience. Now, if you take the view and the conventional view from someone who perhaps is right back for a family or even a culture who is living out the norm and they're just like, everything's fine, like we fit in, this is how we do things. For them, they're going to view the person experiencing depression or feeling like an outsider as, well, how can I help you be like us? How can I help you fit in again? Because if you fit in, then you'd probably feel like I do. Yeah, because I feel okay fitting in. So perhaps if we could just fix this. Right. But that separation that people go through is necessary. It's painful. It's devastating. It can be crushing. It destroys you. But there's a reason for that. Yeah. Once you are separated out of the herd through your experience that no one else around you is having, you're forced to think about things in a new way. You're forced to reinvent yourself. You're forced to find another way. You're forced to innovate.
And which was, for me, the way that I referred to that in my journey was like I let myself out of the cage I had put myself in.
Right.
I had put myself in a box that if I could just, like, if it looked a certain way, if I acted a certain way, if I did a checklist of things, I was going to be happy.
Right.
But really, I had put myself in a very limited belief box that it didn't matter how much I tried to make this cage look beautiful. The truth was it was still a cage.
Right.
And so we all get to this point where our depression, for me, my depression got to a place where I was ready to be done with this human experience. Like, that's where mine took me to. And it was when I hit that point that I was like, oh, and it was through the help of different ways of viewing simply influence, I was able to let myself out of my box.
Right. And you just dropped out a little bit there. You were saying with the help of. And then you dropped out.
With the help, with the help of others who inspired me to look at things in a new way.
Right.
to question, I was raised, don't question anything, just do what you're told and you'll be okay. That's where safety comes from, is just doing what you're told and you'll be okay. And I was introduced to a world of people who were like, hey, question everything. Question if this is serving you. Question if it's not serving you. If it's not serving you, what gets to happen to let that go? And so I just went into, I became as a little child. I feel like it was 2 years ago that I finally got what it means to be like a little child, to be super curious, to explore, and to and to actually allow that to fuel and feed and inspire me to keep going, inspire me to keep looking, inspiring me to push the edges on topics that have so much stigma around them. But there doesn't necessarily need to be I'm all about, if I can show up for one perspective or them to look at something from a new way, awesome. That is that sets my soul on fire, because somebody did it for me. And because somebody showed up that way for me, I was able to let myself out of my cage.
Well, that is awesome. And, that actually leads to a really important point. And, and although aspects of the journey involve isolation and alienation and being kind of separated, you feel so different, you feel isolated. And it's a necessary part of it, because it's actually, it's part of a death process. You can't really wake up into this life as the truly bright being and unique person that you're designed to be unless you actually die while still alive. Mm-hmm. And in traditional societies, in shamanic societies, there have always been initiation rituals. And facing death before you die is part of those rituals, and it's an extremely important part. Evolution is this process where we learn new things, we expand, and then those new things become the new conditioning, and then we break out of that. And then the new thing becomes the new conditioning, we break out of that. So there's constant birth, evolution, death and decay, and then rebirth. It's a constant cycle. We see that in nature. I mean, death is everywhere.
Yeah. And
death gives birth to life and vice versa. So, but there isn't much dialogue around death. There's this, oh, it comes later and let's just kind of manage until we get there. But if you face it through life, then it's actually, it is a liberator. Death is the great liberator, right? Really. Yeah. I mean, in depression, as we experience it, is a personal death. Death of identity. Who am I? I don't know who I am anymore. Do I want to live? That is a process of facing your own mortality. Mm-hmm. And that deep questioning of, do I even want to be here, is excruciating. But on the other side of that question is, depending on how you answer it, it's through coping mechanisms or medication, or, you can choose suicide, which people do because it becomes too painful to go through this process. Mm-hmm. Or you can come through that threshold new, alive, And it's not a final thing. It's like the threshold is constant. It's moment by moment, day by day. Waking up going, well, apparently I'm still alive. You know, that
Right.
threshold, I mean, when we go to sleep, I mean, your head down on the pillow at night and go, I might wake up tomorrow. I might not. You're actually like going through a little death every night when you sleep, but that little death of sleep renews you so you can then be alive again the next day. You know, so having a new dialogue around what death actually is incredibly liberating and enlightening. Now,
so with that, we as human beings, we just want to experience the bliss. I just want it to be happy. I just want it to feel good all the time. I just, like, I'm shining the brightest when I'm like happy and like, look at me, my life is awesome. As humans, we typically don't want to look at the dark. We want to avoid that piece because it's painful, because it's uncomfortable, because there's times where it's scary. When you face into that, it's scary.
Yeah.
And there's also a level of, because like you said, this is an ongoing process. We are constantly being reborn, like we're experiencing death and being reborn constantly as we step into newer and newer evolved ways of being. And so, but what we get to recognize is that as we step into a new way of being, there's an old way of being that we had once identified ourselves as.
Yep.
And there is a mourning process that gets to happen. And when we say, oh no, I just want to be happy. No, I'm going to keep looking forward, and I'm going to keep my eye on the prize. I'm going to stuff this down. I'm not going to allow it to flow. And it seems like the times that I do that, that's when my depression stays longer.
Right.
And so,
absolutely.
So there's this level of allowing ourselves to mourn when that shows up.
Absolutely. And I'm going to take a moment and I'm just going to adjust myself a little. Well, I wanted to ask you something about that. So, and for our viewers here, I think this is going to be an interesting thing to contemplate. But tell me about those moments, because I know you've had them. You have, and it's going to make sense when I ask it. But those moments when you are so crushed and you are crying like you've never cried before, isn't there that moment when that feels ecstatic?
Yeah.
And what is the thing that makes the difference? I mean, you're getting teary-eyed a little bit as I could feel that, like there's so much, wow, just so much juicy stuff around there. But that's when we embrace sadness, crushing grief, loss. And like the truth of the matter, I mean, we've all gone through this, and sometimes it's related to circumstance, and sometimes it just comes and washes over us and feels like it's going to bury us. But when we just go with it, there is this ecstasy that happens. But what is the thing that makes something that normally we think of as so dark and undesirable that we'll avoid it at all costs? What makes something that is generally viewed that way ecstatic for some people when this happens?
I think so. There is a level of when you allow yourself to go into that darkness, that feels like it could absolutely consume you. And the thought of going there would absolutely crush you. Like you may not come out alive.
Yeah.
There is a level, like you said, of that, like that exhilarated feeling when you go into that and you just surrender. There's something with surrendering and allowing, like bringing surrender and allowance into your space and knowing So I've gotten to a place where I know that it doesn't matter what I feel or what I experience. I know that it is for my highest and best. And I know that it is to shape me into the next greatest version of me. Into my, like, as you referred to it as like my next evolved state.
Right.
And so allowing myself, simply there's this there's trust there, whether it's a conscious trust or not.
Yeah.
But allowing yourself to go into that place and surrendering. When we surrender ourselves over to something like this, to experience this, you know, like you've heard, the depth at which you go is also the height at which you can soar.
Yeah.
Well, going to the actual depths and at the bottom, recognizing that in the ugliest and lowest, I'm still good. I'm still okay.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing like the love that you can feel in those places. Like the love that exists in those depths is like, that is transformative when you can tap in and taste that.
There's a moment in which, in those darkest depths, when you're experiencing that surrender, there's a moment in which you realize that you're not actually the one needing to be saved from this. And you're not even the one in search of the light that would liberate you from it. That you're actually the light and the love that is illuminating that experience. That we're not really looking for a certain state or a certain set of circumstances in which we can. People who have gone to those depths, and you know, and just something sparked in my mind, because Hannah, who's in on this video, she's an artist and a singer-songwriter, and there's also something very particular about artists. You know, how badass they actually are as experiential warriors who are willing to go into the depth of any emotion or thought or experience a human can have and articulate it or show it in color or sound. I mean, that is, it takes an incredible amount of trust to do that. But the thing is, when you realize you're the one illuminating any experience, that truly you, okay, so before I say what I'm going to say, the thing is, like, one of the things we often are looking for when we experience, like when we are so overwhelmed by depression, anxiety, and feeling alienated, we're looking for safety. Right? But the moment you realize you are the safest place you can be.
Yeah.
And when that hits you, like, I am the safest place I can be. I am the light that illuminates any experience I'm having. So you don't have to go looking for the light. You don't have to go looking for a safe shore. And for me, like, and I'm kind of deliberately not keeping this discussion not too spiritual or not too esoteric. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff really open for everyone, regardless of what their belief structure is. But, you know, even if you aren't someone who believes in God or spirituality, like, I literally don't care. You're an atheist, you're a Christian, you're an agnostic, it doesn't matter to me. We're all human beings. We're all having this amazingly miraculous experience.
Yeah.
But yeah, doesn't that, like, feel really like, holy shit, I can do anything. I can experience anything.
Yeah.
There's a certain courage that arises. And God, you know, when I talk to people who, you know, are way down deep in this experience, I mean, they're scared.
Yeah.
But one of the things we can do for each other is when you can hold someone's hand either literally or figuratively, energetically. And say to them, not necessarily directly, but say to them with your presence that, you know what, I'm willing to be here with you. I'm willing to go to any depth you're going to with you, because I trust we can do this together. Like, I'm not scared. You can be as scared as you want. I'll go there with you.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? I just get so passionate about this.
Because for me, that was exactly, I got to have somebody hold my hand to go to that depth. Right? I got to, and it was, somebody got to encourage me along the way to actually dive in. And it was after doing that, because at that very low place, that where there's this sweetness that's there. And that sweetness is actually the truth of who you are.
Yeah.
And where I discovered the truth of who I am and completely started shifting the way that I was showing up was after I took a massive dive into that place with the support of other people that had already been there, who had already walked that path, and they were just here holding space and giving me some guidance and direction as I walked mine. And so it's all of us on our paths, and it's like, oh, hey, yep, I've been where you're at. I've been there. Awesome. Let me hold space for you and let me walk with you for a little while. And then later on down the road, it's been awesome because the people that have held space and shown up for me in that way to do the same for them and for others. And so it is like, it's one of the things that you talked about was we don't need to go looking for the light or anything outside of us. Mm-hmm. Everything we need, is where it starts. And in addition to that, we were not designed to do it alone.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up that point. And, one of our brothers in this extended virtual community, the Uncommon Nation, my mind is drew a complete blank.
Levi.
I'm talking.
Yeah, Levi.
I was just talking to him last night. I'm like, my mind just went blank. But it went blank because he is so vast. I couldn't even imagine what his name was.
Right. Exactly.
But he has brought up some incredibly important points, and that's an incredible antidote to some very harmful assumptions and beliefs that exist within a lot of New Age community, a lot of the coaching community. There's this really toxic idea that you are expected to do it alone.
Right.
Now I described earlier, there is a stage at which the isolation and alienation occurs. This happens.
It's part of it.
But
and even when I had my environment of people who were there supporting me and walking with me, it was even during that time that I still felt some of my greatest isolation and alienation, even though I knew that at any moment I could reach out to them and they were there. That's still part of the journey.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily that we have to do it alone. It's that we get to do it for ourselves.
Right.
I get to do it for me. Doesn't mean I have to do it alone.
And that's an important distinction because, no one will ever have your experience. I mean, in one sense, you're alone in having, but I mean, I think, what is the greatest joy of all humans is intimacy, right? To be alone together. You are alone in the experience you're having because no one can see exactly what you're seeing. And even as empaths, as I sit here and I get to know you, and earlier when you teared up, I could feel in my body the emotion. So we're designed to feel into each other and empathize and have a sense of each other.
Yeah.
But why curiosity and openness is so important is I can never know exactly what you're experiencing.
Right.
But our qualities that allow us to empath another is what enables us to ask questions. Oh, I notice that you're tearing up. I notice something's coming up for you. What is that? It helps us communicate and be closer.
Right.
But being alone together, no one can be freed of their journey that's happening within them that no one else really sees.
Right.
But we don't have to be alone while that is happening.
Yeah. So I refer to that as being independently united. So there's like a level of independence, right? Like as an individual, like I get to be an independent individual. I get to take responsibility for myself. I get to take responsibility for all things that show up in my space, right? Because in one way or the other, I co-created that into my world. And so I get to take responsibility for that. And I was very much so programmed in the way of like, I wasn't independent. I was very much so codependent, and it looked like this. I'd be whoever it was, whether it was, my partner or my friends or even with my kids or with my parents, I was leaning. And so if one of us were to slip, we'd both fall.
Right.
And as you go on this journey with depression and and you experience the liberation on it, that's when, instead of showing up in the world as a codependent person, leaning on anything and everyone that shows up, you're able to start showing up as an independent person that can help others. And so could you imagine what a world would look like if we were all walking around independently united, serving in our passion and purpose?
Right.
Like, my belief is if we were all showing up in the world that way, like, there would be no reason for war. If we were all showing up independently united in our passion and purpose.
Something popped up in my mind, and I again, it's like we almost need to like review this video later, make some notes about other videos to do. But in regards to the war, like we see, there's horrific things going on. Yeah. So, and oh my God, this is such a like can of worms to open up. But there's really a big topic around the healing of the feminine and the masculine within the world. And I know that's something that you and Megan with the goddess tribe,
the goddess sisterhood, yeah, the
sisterhood that you guys work on. And I know that Levi and Christopher and other people are hard at work at like creating community for men. Yeah. But without going into that too much, I mean, when like we're talking about intimacy, and you're talking about leaning into each other, right? The codependency. And I'm just going to touch on this subject because it's a huge can of worms, but the kind of behavior we're seeing in the world, like when people talk about like all this violence, the war, and and there's a tremendous amount of violence and abuse towards women. There's all these kind of discussions around like different religious groups, who's at fault, or nationalities. The truth of the matter is, unfortunately, statistically, men are the problem. Men are more statistically violent. They're violent towards other men, and they're violent towards women, physically or emotionally. And it's horrific. The damage is horrific to everyone. And, it's very, in some ways, it's a lot easier to feel empathy and compassion for those who are on the receiving end of this. If we tune into it for a moment, you think of the people who are doing this. How alone are they in their experience that the only way in which they can feel connected to others is by hurting them?
Yeah.
It's terrible for them too. Justify anything that they're doing, but they're isolated within their experience.
Yeah.
And and you can see how that's like a whole can of worms of something to talk about. But on that topic of intimacy and connection is like, we're all in our own world alone, having an experience that no one else is having, and we are connected, independently united in a shared experience. Like, I see you. I mean, you're pixels on a screen, and I hear your voice. Like, how is this happening? But yet I can feel an aliveness in you. It's not me. It's someone else. Like, so there's like, wow, there's someone else having similar experiences, and we're getting to talk about it. Like, that's beautiful to be able to connect like that.
Yeah. When you were referring to, like, you know, like this healing of the feminine and this healing of the masculine, and how statistically, the way that men statistically, right, show up. One of the things that kind of was coming through for me is that the truth of it all is, even like we're all just scared, like on the inside, scared little boys and girls, who simply just want to be loved,
right,
and want to be acknowledged, want to feel important, want to feel seen. And sometimes the way in which we go about creating being seen or creating the attention is through ways that really don't yield us the results that we want. But even underneath someone showing up in a violent way, underneath that facade, underneath that green Hulk, is simply just a scared little boy or a scared little girl that wants to be loved and accepted. And so and I'm still practicing. I'm not even gonna come close to saying that I'm perfect at this. I'm still practicing. But when big energy flares up in my space with, you know, whether that's with Jeff, my fiance, or, you know, with a friend or with family, because big energy flares, it's part of the human experience. But I'm doing my best that I can, that when that shows up, I remind myself, okay, behind all of that anger, typically anger is just a bodyguard for sadness. So behind that anger is just some deep sadness, and either a sad little boy or a sad little girl that simply just wants to be loved.
Yeah.
And I got to first give myself that grace. I got to first tap in and heal that relationship with my own little girl. And then as I've done that, I've been able to do it with others outside of me.
Yeah, and that's amazing, you know, for you to share that. I mean, it's a process, and we're not meant to be perfect. I mean, perfection is not really the point. You know, evolving and improving, and having courage to find the right allies to expand with. And I do want to make a little point. Just kind of tuning into whoever might be listening to this, because although what you're saying is true, there are some very important exceptions for this, because, you know, like, and I'm sure you've had these conversations with sisters, and I've had it with clients and friends, but there are some exceptions to this which are very important to be aware of. Try to help a sociopath. So, and it's a very important topic, because I've had clients who are in relationship with sociopaths or narcissists on the extreme side of narcissism. And, you know, although we can have soul empathy for someone who is that far in the direction of isolation, you know, in a sense, sociopathic behavior, like when someone's actually sociopathic, it's an extreme version of a masculine, and it happens to women as well. So in terms of the structure of the brain, the more masculine the brain is, the more fragmented it is, and the less ability it has to connect. Now, I have had conversations with friends or with clients who are in relationship with people who are probably actually sociopathic, and they keep trying to heal the little boy within this person they're with, or the little girl within them. And I was like, it's not going to happen. It's dangerous for you to be there.
So you can't. So what you're saying, you can't heal someone else's little boy or little girl.
No.
Right. And it's an ever evolving like relationship. Even with my little girl, there's still stuff that will pop up and I'm like, oh, I didn't realize is still hurting and still gets to be loved and still gets to be acknowledged. And the more and more that I have gotten clear with my own inner little girl, the more and more I can see it in others, but also there are some relationships that, like it's okay to walk away from.
No.
It's okay to say enough is enough and to walk away. Because abuse in any form, one, is never okay. And in order for people to heal, create space for that.
Yeah. And
what I mean by that is, I know that in the past I was in a super toxic relationship, and part of my healing process was to literally completely pull away and cut off contact and really focus on what got to heal within me. And then after going through a period of time, now I can actually see things clearer with that person, and I can interact in a more healthy form while still keeping my boundaries. But I first got to create space for the healing for me to take shape.
Yep.
I could bring any healing to the relationship.
Right.
And
well, when
go ahead.
Sorry. No, if you're not finished, please continue.
No, I was just going to say that, especially when it comes to like narcissists or sociopaths, they're super charismatic. They know all the right things to say. And if you find yourself constantly feeling confused and jumbled up and having your emotions played against you, right? Like, can twist anything to make it look a certain way. The truth is you don't need anybody else to tell you what to do or what's right. Tapping it, like healing here and tapping in here and knowing that this is the source of all security. This is the source of all abundance. This is like the source of it all is right here inside of me. And I got to break away from relationships that looked like that. And it's okay to do that. It's absolutely okay to do that.
There's a teacher that I've worked with that, and I'm paraphrasing, but he essentially said, whatever soul contract you have with someone, it's nullified the moment they're abusing you. Like and a lot of times people talk about I'm learning how much you're learning in a relationship, and that is true in any relationship, even but the truth of the matter, and you can't rush anyone on this process, but the greatest thing you can learn from a toxic relationship is that you don't need to be there. Mm-hmm. That is the biggest thing you can learn, is you do not have to put up with this. But it can take people a long time to get to that point of but this, sometimes, particularly people it's different in different, depending on the kind of belief structure you're in and background you're from, like in maybe more religious conservative backgrounds, it's a sense of duty. In the New Age community, it can be, I attracted this, and we're co-creating this, and what am I meant to learn from it? Mm-hmm. However, the moment you're done with it, it's done for you.
Yeah.
Okay. I've watched people cycle around and around and around to get some kind of lesson, because here's the thing is, although it takes two people to start a relationship, it only takes one person to end it. And you don't need the other person's permission to walk away.
Right.
And part of the codependency that can happen is that people are trying to wait until the other person is okay without them, mm-hmm. Or that they understand you or your reasons for leaving. And it's literally, you don't need to negotiate this. You can just walk away. And I'm not here to tell anyone when to do that or how to do that, but you have that permission.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you're also talking to someone who is like an avid, I am an advocate for relationships. Yeah. And building healthy, connected, intimate, loving relationships. And I also know that relationships, they're like the of feeling, experiencing, you trigger the crap out of each other, and it's like the Olympics. It's just it's like the ultimate, right? The ultimate opportunity to experience self-love is within relationships.
It's like the Olympics for the heart.
It is. And like we were talking about, some of the greatest growth comes as a result of being in relationship. You can, we talked about before, I do this for myself, but I was not designed to do it alone. Yeah. And I believe that we bring relationships into our life that are here to co-create. And part of that is going through a phase where you trigger each other, where you massively trigger each other's hurts and unhealed wounds and, those shadow sides of ourselves that aren't serving, that allow us to take a look at that, take ownership of that, take responsibility with that, and up level together. Okay, so I'm an absolute advocate of, if there are two committed, even when it looks like it's hopeless, and there's two people that are truly committed, like any relationship can work. With like everybody gets to take responsibility, everybody gets to take ownership, and we get to learn new ways of communicating and interacting and connecting that actually fosters what it is that we are wanting.
Awesome. I want to draw attention. There's a question coming in from Hannah. How do you know when to call it abuse? With emotional abuse, it can be tricky.
It's true.
And it is a great question. So you're making an important distinction. It's not like a good relationship is without tension or without triggers and so on and so forth. So let me know if this resonates with you. Perhaps one of the difference between the challenges of being intimate, right? Of all the triggers and the hurts that come up, and in an abusive situation, is it not perhaps respect? I mean, if you're in a relationship where you feel respected, you can still be triggered like crazy. You can still be challenging and scary and bring up stuff. But I think perhaps, one of the hallmarks is, do you feel respected? If you don't feel respected by your partner, you're probably in an abusive relationship.
Yeah, there's definitely truth to that. I also know that there have been times even in my relationship with Jeff where I'm like, he doesn't respect me, simply just because I was triggered. So I was projecting that on him.
Right.
So we get to be able to be really clear on what's a projection, and what is true for us. And the time to get out of an abusive relationship is the time that you actually do it.
Yeah. And that's it. Yeah.
So we each have like our own, okay, this is where I can't take this anymore. Right? Everybody that experiences a relationship that's toxic like that, you hit a point where it gets so bad that you finally will do something about it.
So,
go ahead.
One question for you. One of the things that I think can be really tricky is evaluating why you're in a relationship with someone. Particularly if, personally, and you're describing ways in which you're learning and growing with Jeff, which is awesome. But personally, when I hear people say, I'm learning so much from this relationship, if that's a primary thing, I'm like, ooh, it should be juicier than that. It's not if you're in a therapeutic situation that is helping you grow. We go through that, but if that's your motivation, it's pretty suspect.
Yeah. So
someone that you love. Yeah.
So if for me, a relationship should never be considered as like a stepping stone. Oh, I'm just in this relationship so that I can get to my next greatest whatever. Right. Truth is, when you're in a relationship, that's just naturally what's going to happen.
Right.
But tuning into the reasons why am I in a relationship with Jeff? Because he is a man that there is a connection there that I cannot, just a natural, innate connection with him that I have never experienced with another human being, ever. I am there. I want to spend my time with him. I want to like invest my energy in him, in me, in us, in our family. Like, so why am I in a relationship? Because you know what? Being in a relationship, hi babe, you're here listening.
his ears were tickling because you're talking about him.
Right? Why am I in a relationship with him? Because it freaking lights me up.
Awesome. Now that alone, I just stop there, because that is awesome. Now, but part of the thing that comes to mind when I see like how you're lighting up as you're talking about him, which is a great sign. Like, you know, when I talk to friends and they talk about their partner, if they light up like that, I'm thinking, wow, you probably have an amazing partner. If you're not lighting up like that,
I do.
And you're lucky, and you're both lucky. You're both amazingly lucky to have that kind of response to each other. Now, it's not that things are always going to be easy, you know, and relationships can go through phases, but hopefully someone, when they mention like, you know, their beloved, the person they're with, you know, that they light up like that. Like, I am so lucky to be with this person. I love them. I adore them. I'm attracted to them. Kind of like you know, and I've heard from people, and it's just terrible, you know, and I know, with sympathy I say this, but it's terrible when I hear them like, well, I'm learning so much and it's different. You know, like, it's not that it's easy to be really conscious live in a relationship. I mean, there's a skill set. You know, people actually have to learn how to be in a relationship. I mean, when we've had these horrible relationships with, and frankly, we're all in an abusive relationship with society. You know, society is gaslighting the hell out of us.
Right.
You know, and we don't need to point fingers at anyone in particular, because like the whole fucking thing is nuts, right? So all of us are in an abusive relationship with culture.
So we've been talking about that dark moment as individuals, like with depression, and how it is like the greatest liberator, right? Okay,
Ooh,
as an individual, I have walked that.
Yeah.
Guess what else? Jeff and we've walked that as a couple.
Yeah, awesome.
There were times when I was like, I would be like praying, can this just be over? Can I please just be done? This, like, I'm not enjoying this. He's not enjoying this. This was when we were in that, like, basically that second phase of relationship where you're just triggering lots of owies.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Every time I asked and I sat and got present, the answer would come back, you stay right where you're at. Like, it was very clear, you stay right where you're at. So that was a phase of mine and Jeff's relationship where, yeah, we were sticking it out because we were massively learning. Underneath all of the hurt that was being triggered, there was that deep connection that he and I could always, like, that was there. That was a foundation that was there. But just like as individuals, we get to walk through the valley of the shadow of death.
Right. Well,
every relationship that is actually truly in a place of deep intimacy and thriving, I don't know a single one that hasn't walked through that same valley.
Right.
As a couple.
And that's awesome. And like, an important message, you know, because people don't necessarily have much of a template or an example, you know, a couple and go, wow, I want that. What's going on here? How do they make that happen? But, you know, in Tantra, you know, Tantra is a word that in the West we generally associate with, you know, like amazing explosive sex. And
oh my gosh, Tantra, I can't believe you just said that. I can't believe you just said that on.
Why not?
I'm just teasing.
I can say anything.
Tantra and sex often is like a big trigger word. What?
Oh, yeah,
wait, what? We're going there? Wait, huh? What?
Okay, tune in. This is your moment. But in the West, Tantra is usually associated with sex, right? Amazing sex. But Tantra comes from, it's a branch of Buddhism. It's connected to Hinduism going far enough back. But, you know, essentially, I mean, the sexual component of Tantra is maybe 3% of the teaching. And that's the part that in the West they focused on, you know, bigger, longer, more explosive orgasms.
Right.
All fantastic. But the actual simplest way to describe Tantra is awakening through the senses. In one sentence, that is what Tantra is. And it's the only way you can actually awaken is through the senses.
Yeah.
And, you know, we do that in our individual experience. Even what we've been talking about in terms of depression, that is a feeling experience. You are having a sensual experience, which is horrible. I feel awful. I feel like the weight of the world is on me. Well, this is a sensual experience, an experience of the senses.
You're feeling.
Yeah.
You're feeling.
And when you get two people together who are sovereign enough to stand on their own, brave enough, and like, I mean, honestly, horny as hell enough to be together, to go through what you're going to go through together, right? You know, nature is very clever. It's like, you know, how do we get two people together so they can experience this amazing ecstasy of intimacy? Well, let's make them really fucking horny so they can kind of get all that other shit out of the way, because it's a great motivator. But awakening through the senses, right? So you get two people together, the opportunity to die into each other, right? To disintegrate, like all the things you have, all of the things that are difficult come to the surface and go through that cycle of death and rebirth like we talked about. You do that together. Now, you know, as I said earlier, like what is perhaps the hallmark of a healthy relationship, and that's respect. If there's respect, there's safety. If there's safety, then you can do this together. If there isn't respect and safety, then everything is going to be tumultuous in a way that isn't going to be helping your evolution.
Yeah.
But it takes a lot of courage to let someone see your unsavory side.
Yes, it does.
Let them see. Oh, it's like
that.
Oof.
Was that. So that was one of the scariest. That was like next step scary for me. First, it was scary when I, as an individual, chose to actually see and acknowledge those pieces of me that I had been like trying to hide because I carried shame or guilt or whatever around those pieces.
Yeah.
Next level is actually being in a place where, okay, this feels scary and I'm going to be authentic. I'm going to be transparent. I'm going to share the things that I'm judging. I have this story that if I share this with him, he's going to judge me and he's not going to want me. And therefore, like at the root of it all, I actually really am unlovable or fundamentally flawed or, you know, whatever the core wound is.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that is absolutely terrifying. But when you can, but that's where the magic is. The magic that we were talking about, that you feel in like those depths of like when you're experiencing depression for yourself, that magic that happens, it's the same thing that can happen in relationship.
Mm-hmm. It's that edge. It's that edge that we talked about, right? You know, that edge, you know, right on the edge of what we can tolerate, right on the edge. That is where the juice of life is. And, you know, sometimes people talk about like all the things you want are on the other side of your comfort zone. But actually, you can't be on the other side of your comfort zone. You can only be on the furthest edge of it. If you go beyond it, you disintegrate. And in a way that sometimes people can't be put back together again. You know, and like I know it's a fancy thing, you know, like thing people say in the coaching world, you know, like get on the other side of your comfort zone. But the truth of the matter is, like, to use an example, like if you're an athlete and you're training to do some amazing event, if you're constantly on the other side of your comfort zone, you're going to be injured in a way that you're going to have to stop. If you're right on the edge of what you can handle, and that if you're only pushing, you will hurt yourself in a way that's not helpful. If you're stretching and then knowing when to retract, okay, now I need to rest. Now I need to recover. Okay, now I'm stretching. Now I need to recover. It's an ebb and flow. And
Yeah, it's an ebb and flow, and it's also bringing what we've talked about a little bit is a balance of the masculine and feminine within each of us. The masculine is the go do, right? The feminine is be receive. And so it's having that balance, because when I'm playing too much in my masculine, like I get shut down. If I'm too much in my feminine, well, I'm not creating everything that I most want. Right? So it's that balance of the two.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's having just like we talked about, respect for another in relationship is a cornerstone of having that be a healthy relationship. Likewise, having respect for yourself is the cornerstone of your relationship with yourself. Because when you respect yourself, with respect, you can handle the fact that you're not perfect. With respect, you can handle that you have limitations.
Yeah.
Personally, as a coach, I've kind of operated on the periphery of coaching and try to step into going to the next step in terms of my professional life in that. And I've kind of not found yet with that. But part of it is that I see things in the coaching world I really don't like. And I'm taking my time to see what it is I have to really offer. But there is even the idea you don't have limits. It's bullshit. You don't have limits. You're in a fucking body. That is a limit. It's a limit. Our minds have limits. Your ability to cognate has limits. It's not that we're the infinite, the God or source, whatever you believe, like the universe. It might be infinite, but we're having a finite experience. Now, it's not as finite, let it be. We're not as limited as we, let ourselves be.
Yeah.
But limits are not in the way of our experience. Limits are not in the way of how amazing life can be. Limits are part of life. Let's expand into what's possible. I think we're kind of
there's a million different, we could run down a million different rabbit holes today. Absolutely, we could.
Well, we've got an hour and 12 minutes, so
check us out.
And I feel like we've only just scratched the surface. So
I appreciate you inviting me to be a part of this, opening up dialogue and to literally just trusting and surrendering enough to just let whatever flows and what unfolds to just unfold. I appreciate the way that you show up in the world and don't try to control and make it look a certain way and have it be a certain way. But you're just hey, I'm feeling called to this. You're feeling called to this. All right, let's see what wants to happen. So I appreciate that, and I honor that in you. So thank you. God.
And thank you for being willing to play ball and enthusiastically as you did. And wow, I'm just blown away by I could just throw out a question there and you just rolled with it, and you're willing to share, you're being honest and sharing incredible insights. And I am sure that tons of people have gotten a lot out of what you've shared today. And I kind of feel like this might happen again. I'm open to it. I'm open. Let's pick another topic. I know. And we got Levi on here with hearts and. Oh, thanks, Levi. Well, let's just wrap it up for now, and we'll check to see what the feedback is and see where we go from here, I guess. Perfect. Sounds great. We should bust out the champagne. There we go, and celebrate. I'm all about celebrating. Well, so honored to meet you for the first time virtually, and dive into such an amazing topic. And I think this whole dialogue itself is a testimony to the kind of vulnerability that opens up intimacy between strangers. I'm getting to know you, you're getting to know me, and we're letting everyone view that whole experience of here's two people who don't know each other having a conversation. Yeah. And it can be that easy. Yep. So thank you, and love you, even though I'm just getting to know you. So awesome. Awesome. Yeah. Well, have a great day. You too. Thank you. Okay. Bye now. Bye.